There he is.
Oh, there he is.
He just showed up. Smack him a gob, everybody. Phil Soussan's
Hey,
about to join us. He doesn't even know we're live. We got to tell him.
Gotta tell him we're live.
Hello.
Hello, Phil.
hey, Phil.
How's it going?
Hey,
Going on.
Good.
Hang on a second.
yeah.
There we
There
go.
you
There we go.
There you are. Yeah.
Hey, just to let you know, we're live now.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
swear,
But you can
right?
say whatever you want, of course.
I can.
No,
It's all good.
no, you can't swear because I'm Disney. I'm part of the Disney.
I'll make sure I won't use any fucking F words or anything.
Yeah, there you go.
Those.
So, Phil, how are you, man? Great to see you. Thanks
Dane,
for joining
that's
us.
one hell of a collection you got there. I
Well,
gotta
thank
say.
you very much.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure I have something of yours back there somewhere. I know.
Yeah,
knew
I've got a
things.
few over here, I'm sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I
That's
digress.
all right.
How are you?
Good, man.
Everything's
Hey,
good.
we all heard your recent the album. It's
Prophets of
really,
Addiction.
yeah, it's total to me. It's kind of dirty rock and roll. Wouldn't you agree? It's got that dirty feel to it.
Exactly. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something that was street, was kind of just brash, but still sounded like it was a something that was properly recorded and has a cool vibe about it. So yeah, I think we managed to nail what we were trying to do.
Yeah, it's great. I like that song. What was it? High, getting high. What was it called again?
Let's get high.
Yeah, that's
Let's get high.
Yeah,
that's
catchy.
a catchy one. You know.
It's catchy and it's great because I love things that on the surface are not what they appear to be about. So the song is really just about the sort of the that thing, that sentiment that seems to have gone now, that whole idea of excitement about getting a record and then going out and buying it and then putting it on and waiting for it to get in stock. I remember when I went to buy the Pretenders album, and I was just talking about this the other day. And when it first came out, it was sold out. You couldn't get it. I mean, you had to keep going back to. They said, "Well, we're going to get some more in next week." Okay, you go back next week, gone. We're getting some more tomorrow, gone. And by the time you got the record, you went and took it home, and it was like it was an experience. It was now everything is instant gratification. Boom, it's right there.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
don't
it's
even listen.
like
You don't even listen to the song. You go, "I want to hear a little bit of this album." You look at about 30 seconds through the song, and you're like, "Okay, next. What's next?"
Yeah, short attention span.
Right.
oh yeah, it's like being a kid growing up and you save your money up to go buy that record that you've been thinking about and you finally
Right.
get it home and play it,
You know what I
Excitement.
used to do when I was a little kid? I would ride my bike to the record store that was about 4 miles away, pretty far.
Yeah.
And driving back with what I would buy, I would park at a canal and just sit there and look at the album and then
Yeah.
get back on my bike. It would take me like a good hour and something. And those days are gone.
But have you heard of anybody lately saying, "Hey, do you want to come over and listen to a couple of albums?"
Yeah, no,
No,
no.
not at
I
all.
was like, "Huh? What do you?"
And even if
what?"
I invite somebody over, they don't want to come over. So
Right.
it might be me. That might be why.
No, I'm sure not. Come on, man.
Do you still collect or buy albums still? Are you strictly with the
Oh,
streaming now?
it's a bit of a sad story because my whole record collection I left back in England, and it was all vinyl albums and stuff.
Right.
And it was sort of parked at my mom's house. And when my mom sold the house, my brother called me and said, "We got to do something with this. What do you want to do with it?" So I got a few choice things sent over. A lot of stuff, unfortunately, sort of was let go. But I still very much appreciate collecting records and collecting. I still have a pretty big CD collection, here. It's it's uh, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, I'm looking at you guys' collections there, and that's something that's really cool. I'd love to kind of look through them and spend time going to somebody's house and looking through that stuff. And it doesn't have quite the same effect crawling up to somebody and saying, "Hey, do you know how big my hard drive is?"
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ralph was just telling us before we went on, he's moving. He was talking about
Yeah.
how heavy his vinyl is trying to move it in crates. He's having to take it out and put it in little boxes to move it.
Yeah, it's just too heavy for me to take. I have collections just like them, but I'm moving now, you know.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I've been this way since the '70s, since I was a little kid. When vinyl was no longer in fashion, I would still buy vinyl. I still loved,
Yeah.
the big, the bigness. But I also love CDs. I have a bunch of CDs, and those are heavy too, you know.
Yeah,
It can
for
be,
sure.
yeah. I mean, you put enough of them in a box, but I mean, vinyl albums were really heavy, and you had to take care of them as well, and there was all that stuff that went with it as well. You kind of have to you look after it. You make sure not to put your fingers on it, and use one
Yeah,
of those special vinyl dust brushes. Every time you put it on the turntable. I mean, I just love the whole experience. It's an added experience to music, which isn't there.
Hmm.
So
right.
like like watching a video on MTV would be an added angle to the music as well. This as well was something that was added. The whole performance that goes into listening to something. I think it's a shame that it's missed, but I'm really glad it's coming. It seems to be coming back. People like it. They're rediscovering the idea of a vinyl record and a turntable, and what I really like about it is that with CDs and with streams or whatever you want to call it, you'll specifically listen to a song, but with vinyl, you'll listen to an album, or at least one side of an album, right? I mean, you don't just
Oh
put
yeah.
one track on and say, okay, I just want to hear this track, and then I'm
Yeah, if you're
off.
getting the vinyl out, you're listening to the whole thing.
Yeah,
Right.
you'll listen to it in full.
And then that's
Phil,
nice because if you've got a record that's got like a whole thread of some kind of continuity of some kind of concept going through it, you can take somebody along on that ride, at least
yeah,
for one side,
yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. I wanted to ask you. I know Prophets of Addiction have been around for a while. I've actually seen them. I live in North Carolina, and they used to play down here. It's probably been, God, it was. I use the term pre-COVID now, because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember several years before COVID, maybe 16 or 17 was the last time I think they were down here. But I saw them a couple times, and so I know they've been around for a while. How did you get involved with them?
Oh, I've known Les for years. Over 2 decades, a long time. And I've always sort of been involved in something that he's done. I really like him a lot. I think he's a great songwriter. I think he's a great lyricist, and he has a really great sort of commercial sensibility about what he does. So he sort of knows what's hooky and what works, and he keeps it it's pretty simple. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and I think that's sometimes a hard thing to do. But so I really like what he does, and in the past he's come up to me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm doing an album. I've sort of piecemealed it together with some recordings here and there. But can you mix it? Can you put it all together for me?" And so I would do things like that. I've probably done, I don't know, 4 or 5 records with him. And this time he called me up and said, "I think we're going to be able to do it from scratch, all in one process. Would you like to do this?" And I said, "Absolutely, yeah. Let's make it happen." So we recorded it here. I'm in Las Vegas at the moment, so we recorded it here. We did the backing tracks over at Desert Moon, which is owned by Danny Coker from Counts Customs. And Danny's a good pal, and we said, "Can we use the studio?" And he went, "Yeah, sure, perfect." So we did all the backing tracks there, and then came back to this is my home studio here. So we came back here, and we did all the overdubs, and it was just relaxed. I mean, we didn't have a clock going. We just said, "Okay, well, let's just record these parts and guitar parts and vocals and overdubs, and let's work on some stuff." So it was really a fun experience. I actually like that kind of recording experience, and sometimes I miss the studios. But the minute you get into a studio, it's that anxiety because there's a clock ticking, and you're thinking, "Oh, we got to do something. We got to get it done now." You can't say, "Well, let's just take a few days off and let's reconvene next week." So that was how we did it. It was
Yeah,
cool.
cool,
Very
killer.
cool.
Well, that's a great way of recording with no pressure.
Yeah,
That must also. Would you agree it would help with the songs too if you take time and don't rush it?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot to be said for having a little bit of a pressure. I mean, if I have to get something done in 3 weeks, it's usually in about 20 days. I'll think about getting to it. So all of a sudden I'm like, I got to get this done by tomorrow. People tend to leave things a little bit until the last minute. But if you do have that pressure, it does force you to focus sometimes. On the other hand, to your point, um, sometimes it's great. People go away and they'll say, "Well, I'm just going to go and, I don't know, rent a house somewhere in the middle of nowhere that's detached from everything just because I want to write a record." And that forces you to focus because you don't have the distractions that are going on. And these days, distractions are the worst. I mean, these darn cell phones. It's like, I'm working. It's like ping, 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 ping. And it's really hard to just lock into something. And when you're trying to write, you really are trying to build a whole, get in touch with how you feel about something. And sometimes you almost have to. I don't want to use the word meditate, but it's probably a good word because you really have to block out everything else and just focus on it and try to insert yourself into the idea so that you understand it really well enough to be able to write um, what you want concerning that song, that sentiment. So yeah, both are good. It's nice not to have distractions, but it's also nice to have a little bit of a timeline that you've got to get it done.
Wayne Stokely was recording drums for this album. How'd you get in touch with him?
Oh,
I'm
he
friends
came
with him on
with Les.
Facebook. I see him all the time.
He turned up with Les.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, Les already he'd already known that Wayne was going to do the record, and Wayne's just terrific. He's a great drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And we sat down and he's good because he also knows what works and what doesn't work. So very often, you get into the situation where, what do we think? Do we think that works? Do we think? And he's like, no, this works, this doesn't. That's what we're going to do.
Mm.
And he's right. His feel is fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really a lot of single or two takes and stuff. It's great working with him.
Yeah.
A nice guy too.
Yeah. He seems like a nice guy. Like I said, I only see him on Facebook and talk to him once in a while, but yeah, he seems like a nice guy. I noticed also the album. I don't know if you know the band 69 Eyes. Have you heard of them?
Heard of them, but
Yeah. Well, if you go check that 69 Eyes, you'll see a very uh similar style in music to you guys. It's
okay.
even vocally too. I immediately like picked up on it like really quick.
Yeah.
They're one of my favorite bands. So like hearing you guys sounding kind of similar to them, it really got my interest in you guys. So
Good.
it's really good.
Excellent.
I really do enjoy it. And one of my favorite songs. I love the lyrics for it. The song "Last One in the Bar."
Right.
Who wrote that song?
Les wrote all these songs. I mean,
He
this,
wrote all the lyrics. Okay.
I produced it. I mean, I had a little bit of help input here and there, and some lyric lines and ideas sometimes. But no, Les wrote everything. So, um, and I think that it's a funny song, but it's also maybe you should ask him because he wrote the song, but it might be a little bit of a sort of autobiographical
I was gonna
biographical
say that,
thing.
yeah, a lot of these songs like personal.
Well, he's been clean and sober for I think 2 decades now. So
Okay.
I dare say that that's the either some kind of historical uh, story, fictitious story about uh, somebody, or he might be something to do with him. But I love the idea that you've got a guy in the bar who won't leave, but at least he tells the truth. I mean,
Right.
he's not going to bullshit you. So
Right.
that's kind of funny. Um, great
I've
song.
seen that guy.
Yeah, I know. We've all seen that guy. I mean, I've not, I've worked with a lot of people who have had a lot of challenges with that stuff, and fortunately, I have not. I don't know. It was just in my makeup that I always sort of knew when the night was drawing to a close and it's time to go to bed. But there are some people who have a real difficulty with that, and it's tough. It's tough for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyone who chooses to do that and takes control of their life, I salute them. I take my hat off to them. So it's good.
Yeah, really.
What's going on with Last in Line?
Well, we're doing another album. We're doing a fourth album. We're in the process of working on it right now. It's going to be done uh, actually similar to Jericho because Jericho we started um, I think it was beginning January of 2020. We happened to be in LA and somehow or other we said, oh, let's go in the studio and bang some ideas out, which is normally what we do. and I have access to a studio there. So I said, "Oh, I'll get some time." And we went in there and we cut some. We thought we'd cut a couple of tracks. We ended up cutting, I think, 5 or 6, and that was cool. Just backing tracks really. And that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because right after that, the pandemic kicked in, and we couldn't do shit. But at least we had these songs that we could work on. So we finished those songs, and then we worked on the rest of the songs. So half the album was done that way, half the album was done file transfer, by remote. And that's how that record was done. This new record is going to have to be somewhat similar, because obviously we've got to work around Vivian's schedule with Def Leppard, but he's also going through some personal things as well, which is going to take up some time. So we're going to have to sort of do a lot more of it like this. Having said that, we did get together, and we came up with about, I don't know, 15 or 16 snippets, and that's kind of how we work in that band. It's really different. It's unusual. Many times, people go in and say, "Hey, okay, everyone's going to bring in 2 or 3 songs, and then we're going to have a listening session, decide what we like and what we're going to work on." In this band, it's quite different. We literally go in with nothing, and we just plug our instruments in, and we'll play around and mess with ideas until we come up with things that sort of make us smile. We think, well, that's kind of cool, and then we'll try to piece it together. I'll usually take a multi-track little recording device in, and we'll record all that stuff, and then I'll come back here, and then at least put it together in some kind of arrangement, and then we'll put it to the side, and that becomes a song in the process, in making. So that's kind of how we do that. So we've already sort of done that for a bunch of the material, and now we're going to be probably flying tracks back and forth between us. And the hope is that we can actually get this thing out sometime next year and tour after the summer.
Great. Yeah. It's always good to see you guys. I try to go see you every time you come around. You and I met a couple years ago in Virginia after a show. Me and some friends went backstage and we're talking to you.
Okay.
Yeah, after the show.
That was at
the Beacon, the Beacon in Hopewell.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I was talking to you about Ozzy, and I said, you might remember, I said I saw the last date of the Ultimate Sin tour in the U.S., where it was James Hetfield's birthday, and you said that you did, I think Ozzy Camp had offered them some more shows, offered Metallica some more shows, and they couldn't do it because they went to Europe. And you said, I feel like if I've always wondered if they had took us up on that offer, would things have turned different and Cliff would still be with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a sobering thought, isn't it? I mean, it's a fatalistic thought, how one thing unrelated thing can lead to something else. And
Mm-hmm.
if they'd have done some more shows with us, who knows?
Yeah.
Your mind plays tricks with you when you start thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. What if situations?
Right?
Yeah.
I'm originally like a science nerd. I was sciences and math and stuff like that when I was at school, which I loved. But I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, someone was asking me about how, some wise words on how to become successful. And one of the things I said was, well, if you stay focused and front and center on what it is that you want to do, then every single little decision that you make in your life is somehow going to be affected by that process, right? I really want to do this, therefore, am I going to go out and hang out with some friends and go to a bar? Or am I going to learn this part that I want to do? And the answer is you're going to learn the part. So it's a little bit like you're sailing a boat and you're just making these little tiny adjustments every day, and somehow or other you get to where you want to go. So what I was thinking about this mathematically is I realized if you made 10 decisions a day, right, and then you did that for 10 days, you would have 10 to the power of 7. You'd have 1 million different outcomes in 1 week. Can you believe that? So that's like,
crazy.
that just goes to show you, multiply that over a few months or a couple of years, and you could have all of these different outcomes, and there's going to be one that you're going to take, which is going to be influenced by what you do. it's really a same sort of thing. And then you think about, you know, poor Cliff, and just wonder, just this one little thing, it could have been just one thing that had changed, and he'd be here. So
Yeah.
True.
anyway, that's interesting. It's almost like a stoner conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
At first, Tony, I thought you were going to say you drove Phil somewhere.
Do what?
No.
Tony drives a lot of people around.
I work in the industry I work a lot of shows, and I work as a runner, so I take people places, you know.
Yeah. So every time somebody's on the show, Tony's
every time I say, "Oh yeah, I took him somewhere once."
Wayne just drives people mad.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And I'm trying to read the chat. There's so much stuff going on in the chat here, and a lot of it is about Ultimate Sin and Ozzy and stuff like that.
I
And
will say real quick, I
Go
did
ahead.
see Ultimate Sin tour, but it was with Queensryche. So
Mhm.
that was after Metallica left, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In Florida, I'm in
we did
South
some
Florida.
shows with Blue Oyster Cult as well, and then we
Oh,
did,
really?
yeah,
Mm.
Wow.
and then we did some shows with. I actually think I might be wrong about this, but I think that after there might have been a chance that Metallica was going to come back to do some rejoin us afterwards, but after what happened, I think that's why they reached out, and we did some shows with Blue Oyster Cult because they were available while we were waiting for Queensryche to become available.
Wow, that's wild.
so that was the second leg. Yeah, that because you guys went to you. I guess because Metallica stopped and went to Europe, and then you guys had a break, and I guess Queensryche came on with the second leg.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's right. I actually have my tour book here, knocking around here somewhere. I probably had
Tour
hours.
itinerary.
Well, it's
Speak-
more than itinerary, it's the whole book. Yeah.
Itinerary or tour book? Because I actually have the Ultimate Sin tour book.
Yeah, I have one too because you signed it.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah, I do have that tour book.
Yeah, I've got mine, and Phil signed it, and so did Jake.
See?
Oh
that's
yeah, you're.
Yes.
Tour.
No, I don't have. We don't have that, Ralph.
And you won't.
They weren't selling that.
And then you have tons and tons and tons of pages of all kinds of arrangements. And stuff.
Wow, that's
And look at
amazing.
this. Look what falls out of here. This is something which I got from my days over at Soussan. A Swan Song postcard.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Pretty
So
extremely rare, right?
I was going to bring that up because Phil was in a band with Simon Kirk from Bad Company called Wildlife, and they were on Swan Song label.
Oh wow. What year was this?
Gosh, 82, 83, 83 probably.
Wow.
And they did the original version of Shot in the Dark, but it's not on the album. It was only I've heard the demo on YouTube, but it's not on the album.
No, that was Shot in the Dark was a song I wrote, and they did a cover of it, but they changed they wanted to change all the lyrics and stuff. But we did that, and then never did anything with it afterwards. And then afterwards, you know, the song was presented to a few other people I worked with, and people were not really interested in doing it. It's funny. And then with Ozzy, it was, you know, they came in and it was short a song. And then I said, oh, you know, looked at the new guys, looked at me, at Randy and myself. Did you guys have any songs? And I played them 3 songs. I played them a song called Sting of Justice, a song called Two Blade Knife, and a song and Shot in the Dark. And they really liked Shot in the Dark. And so we ended up doing that. And then the rest is history. So sometimes, you know, songs can sit around and until the opportunity arises, you know.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, this is really funny because Sting of Justice, I was playing around with that one day, and Vivian heard it, and he was like, "Wow, what's that?" And I go, "No, it's horrible. It's really old." No, what is it? I said, "No, it's awful. It's like something I wrote 25. Now it's a lot more than that, isn't it?" Years ago, at the beginning of the '80s. And he said, no, I think that's pretty cool. So we played around with it, and it ended up becoming House Party at the end of the world in the last Jericho album. That's what that riff came from. So that's really funny.
Great.
Oh, cool. Yeah, in the chat here, somebody says, Last in Line is a killer band, gives me hope for the future of hard rock.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
They're loving what you do.
Yeah, we love playing in that band. It's just a no-nonsense band, and it's powerful, it's got a great vibe, and again, it's really straightforward. It's a 3-piece band with a singer, and my favorite format of bands. That's always been my favorite format of band. You know, it's you don't have enough you don't have enough going on that you can mess around. You have to be focused. You got to be right on top of your game, and it just never lets the energy never lets up. Viv takes a solo. I've got to kind of kick in and double down, and Vinny pushes me, and I think I'd like to think I push him as well, but he really pushes me. He's a great guy to play with, and Andrew on top of it. It's a great band.
Yeah, I enjoy watching you guys, man. It's just so good live, and I love watching Vivian playing the Les Paul through the Ingle, man. It's just you don't get to do that with Def Leppard, so he's really getting this full stage volume and everything,
Yeah.
man. It's killer.
And
Yeah,
that's his famous old Les Paul,
yeah, the Les Paul. Yep,
Les Paul. It's
the
great.
one by the serial number. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
the
can't
serial
remember,
number like he
what the
does.
number is off the top of my head. But it's great. Another thing, I mean, I turn up with one bass, he turns up with one guitar, with one set of drums. I sometimes I'll do gigs with bands and there'll be like different tunings, and I have 3 or 4 basses and tons of equipment. It's just no nonsense. It's one guitar plugged in, that's it, and that's the sound.
Yeah.
There's a raw simplicity to it, which kicks back to the days of Free and Zeppelin and the Who and Bad Company and all of those great 3-piece bands or 4-piece bands from back in the classic days.
Yeah. Well, I know when you guys first started, you had Eric playing keyboards. Well, I guess originally it was Claude, and then Eric was touring with you, I think, but you guys just decided just to do away with the keyboards and just go back to a solid, like, 4-piece rock band.
Yeah, I went back to a straight ahead rock band, and the keyboards sometimes impart a different sound to what's going on. That's for sure. Certainly, I mean, I think whenever there's keyboards, it tends to kind of fill it out a lot, round it out. But there's a rawness about a 3-piece or 4-piece band that we were just talking about, that has kind of become the spirit of this band, I think. And people really respond to it. All of those bands have always. I mean, even there's just so many bands that are like that, and I just think that has a whole energy that goes with it. That's just in your face, and it's not. The subtlety is within the light and shade of what we're doing, as it is. So it's definitely a different sound, but people like it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Shot in the Dark was one of my favorite songs. One of my favorite Ozzy songs. What was it like working with Ozzy?
Well,
I'm sure. I know you had your time with him, but
No. I mean, it was a great time. It was really an amazing time, and I mean, I was really young. I was like 24 or something when I was in the band, and Ozzy's a comedian. I mean, everything is practical jokes all the time, to the point where you kind of have to make sure that you don't end up becoming the subject of the practical jokes. But, when you're not, they're very funny. When you are, it's like, okay, great. But we were also playing at a time when we were way on top of everything, and the kind of music that we were playing dominated the airwaves, dominated the awards shows, dominated everything. It's not the same anymore. I don't need to tell you that. I see these award shows and I'm like, who, what,
right?
Where's the rock band?
Yeah.
And it just seems, it was just a very, very special time. We were playing and touring and playing and touring, going round and around the country, and we got to a point where we just said, okay, maybe we should go home and make another record, because we could have kept on doing that. Every time we went back to the same markets, we were still filling shows, selling out shows. And needless to say, of course, back in those days as well, tickets were affordable. It was easy for people to go and see bands, and it was fun. There was only about a few things you could do back then, before the era of computers. I mean, you could go to a bar, you could go watch a movie, you could watch TV, you go see a band, go see a game, sports game. I can't think of anything else, right?
Right.
Now it's like all this other stuff. Well, I've got to sit home and
Yeah,
put
there's
stuff
so
on
many
Instagram.
distractions. Yep.
Too many distractions. So it was a special time. It was a rock and roll time. I mean, America was synonymous with rock and roll to
Mm,
me. It's like that was what it was about.
yeah.
So I'm really glad and fortunate, and I feel very fortunate I was able to 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 tour during those really special years. And so it's always great to meet people who say, "Oh, we saw one of your shows because we were part of that same crowd,
Hmm.
part of that
Right,
same
right, right.
family." Yeah,
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 I see a
and
lot
that
of
was a
people
tight
talking about
band.
that tour too. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was a very tight band with Randy and Jake. Yeah.
yeah. And Randy was, my dear friend. I mean, he was my closest friend, and I'd known him from before Ozzy as well for a long time. And so, and that was, we had John Sinclair off the side of the stage, doing the necessary keyboard parts for most of the time. It was the same thing. It's that three-piece band again, guitar, bass, and drums,
Mm,
and Ozzy. So lots of fun to play.
right. Now, if Ozzy didn't take that song, "Shot in the Dark," was anybody else interested in that song?
Well, like I said, after I had presented it to 3 or 4 different bands, as after the Wildlife band, I presented it to other bands, and
Really? Wow.
no one really sort of bid at it. It just, it's just you have to wait for the right opportunity for a song.
Right. Right.
I mean, I've written a lot of songs. I don't even know. It's over 200,
Mm,
and that are published. And you just wait for these opportunities and if I can't, and if I really like a song, I'll put it on a solo record.
mm.
You know,
Right. Right. Right.
it's all about making music, and that's what it's about. It's about making music. It's not necessarily driven by having selling songs or having them as commercial successes. Maybe if I was just one of those songwriter people, because
Hmm.
there are people who do nothing but songwrite, and they're amazing at it. But for them, it's the motivation. It's getting the song getting the song placed.
Mm,
But for me, it's like I'm just happy to go out and play, and you know, all the time I worked with John Waite, who's one of my favorite songwriters and favorite voices. I worked with him for 4 years, and I was quite happy to just go out and play the songs, play his songs,
hmm.
and have a great time doing that. So, it's not a
Were the
I think
lyrics
that's
were the lyrics to "Shot in the Dark" on the Ozzy version, or were there different lyrics before that?
No, they were pretty much similar to the original lyrics. We changed a few things, but when they did the cover in Wildlife, they wanted to change a bunch of stuff, and they wanted to change the lyrics, so they changed the lyrics, and then I went back to my original stuff afterwards.
mm,
Right on. Fort Fairlane.
just gonna bring that up.
Ford
You're
Fairlane.
I'll have a follow-up question for that, but how was that like? Because that at the time, that was a big Hollywood production, right?
Mm,
It was huge. It was a huge movie, and I was living in New York at the time, and so they were flying me for scenes back and forth and back and forth, and everything was like very, very high end. It was all first class flights, and it was very nice, but very fun as well. We had a great time doing it. Vince called me up and asked me if I'd be part of it. That's how I got into it, and he also asked Randy and Carlos, and we ended up doing that, and it turned out to be a blast. I mean, it takes a long time doing these movies. It's lots and lots of days of filming, lots of standing around, like
mm.
lots just standing there going, okay, well, what happens now? Well, just hang tight. So, but we had a good time, and Andrew Dice Clay was cool. I guess he's actually a drummer as well. So him and Randy got on
Oh,
great,
really? I didn't know that.
trading licks and what have you.
Hmm.
Um, um, the story was also funny because one of my best friends at the time was Sam Kennison, and there was a bit of a rivalry between him and and Andrew Dice Clay. So I was always sort of cognizant of that, and I was like trying to make sure that I didn't let those two worlds, uh, cross over too much. Yeah, but it
So
was fun.
that Len, soon after that, maybe a year after that, you were in the video with Vince Neil for You're Invited, but your friend can't come, and then you all played it live on MTV.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're not there no more. What happened then?
Oh, well, I actually got a call from, it was Vince and Bruce, his manager at the time, Bruce Bird, and Jack Blades. And Vince and I had been friends for donkey's years, and he'd just left the band. And the three of them were in the office. They called me, and Bruce said to me, "You know, we're here with Vince. You need to get together with your buddy here and put a band together, and you guys need to put a whole new band together, write a whole album, all that stuff." And I said, "Oh, okay." I was doing other things at the time, and I said, "Okay, I'll do this." And very quickly, in fact, the day we filmed the video for You're Invited was, I'd come straight from Sam Kinnison's funeral, as he had passed away, and that was that day. Literally went from the funeral, which was not a great headspace, and then went straight away to film that video. And I put the band together with Vince, and then a long process of spending a long time going through and writing songs. A lot of songs that I'd already had, actually. I think about 7 songs that I wrote with him, or brought to him, that were in mostly advanced stages. And the reason was that was stuff that I had actually been writing and keeping for Ozzy's next record, which I didn't use when I left the band. So I took those songs with me, and a lot of that stuff I presented to Vince, and he liked a lot of it. So that's where a lot of that material came from, and good song never goes to waste. And we wrote some stuff that we thought was good, that we believed in. We put the band together and recorded the album, and then his manager passed away. Bruce passed away unexpectedly, and it just seemed when he passed away, I don't know, just everything hit the fan. Things just got really, really weird in the band, with a certain personality. I don't want to talk about it, but I just went, this is cool. I wrote the record. I've had a great time. I gave Vince a big hug and said, if you ever want to get together, write another record, I'm your friend. I'm here to do it. So, we obviously stayed friends and everything. And I just decided to move on.
So you played on the record?
Yeah, I played on the record.
Because Robbie Crane got the picture on. I don't know. Maybe it's in the liner notes. I don't know.
Well, it's one of those situations that he might have redone something on there. But if he did, that's cool. But yeah, I played on the record. I played that record 5 or 6 times, actually.
I feel like if that album would have came out a few years earlier, it would have exploded.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And another thing that really is odd is somewhere around here I have the original demos that we recorded for those songs, and they kick the shit out of the album. They sound so much better than the record.
Wow.
So it just stuff started to go weird. Most of everyone in the band's great. There's a couple of personalities that were just, I didn't sign up for that, so I just decided to gracefully bow out at that point.
It sold well, though. It did do well.
It did well. It did well. We had anticipated selling a lot more when we first did the deal, because Vince and I went to Warner Brothers and took all the meetings together, the two of us, and he ended up with the deal that he ended up with. And to be honest, I think we were all projecting it to sell 2 million straight out the gate. It was on the heels of Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing scientific about it. We just thought, well, Dr. Feelgood sold 7 million, so it's not unreasonable to assume that this will probably do top double platinum pretty quickly. But it didn't do that, but it did very well.
No, it did well. I mean, that was at the dawn of the music kind of changing. That's why I feel like that album would have been released like 89, 90.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think because it was more, but I love it. I think it's a great album. I'd love to hear the demo.
Yeah, it is.
That'd be great to hear, if it's
that's not something which I would be permitted to do. I probably have some.
Of course not.
No, you can't do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, when I listened to it, I was just, that sounds to me like it's got that raw energy that seems to me, that was saying everything to me at the time. But no, whatever, it's all good.
Yeah. We got anybody in the chat?
Got some questions in the chat, and I was actually going to ask this one earlier. Do you still keep in touch with Jake E. Lee?
Uh, I don't really talk to him that much. I don't think he talks to very many people actually. Recently, he got into he had somebody trying to shoot him. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got shot several times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, I put something out there to him. I hope he gets better. I hope, that's just an awful thing. I can't imagine, what those world's coming to. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's a guy who very much kept to himself, um, both in the band and afterwards. I mean, he was even when we were on the road. I mean, Randy and I were pretty much the center of a lot of attention.
Hmm.
And anytime there was something going on, we were always in the middle of it. Um, Sharon used to refer to us as the Righteous Brothers. I don't know. I think it's a bit tongue in cheek. But Jake always sort of pretty much kept to himself. He was a bit of a, you know, always on his own. He's doing his, always training and doing his martial arts stuff, which he did a lot of. And then that was his personality. So, yeah, when he left the band, we didn't really, he didn't really, I don't think he spoke to anybody really afterwards for a while. I haven't spoke to him in years. So.
Hmm. All right, here's a
Great guitar
question
player.
from,
I
what's
mean,
that?
That's a great guitar player.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
yeah.
This I don't know what this question even means. Count Ralphus wants to know: is it true that Sharon kicked you in the shin at Randy's funeral?
Yes, she did.
She did.
Yes, she did.
Why did she do that?
I, I don't think she likes me very much.
I don't think she likes
I think
anybody.
she was making it. She was. I don't know. You got to ask her that. It was some kind of publicity stunt or something. It was at Randy's funeral, and she came up and I just it wasn't. It didn't hurt that much, but somebody kicked me in the leg, and I was like, "Fuck!" And I looked around at Sharon, and I just looked at her. So I was like, "What? What is it?"
Hmm.
And she said something to me, and I said. I yelled something, and I said, "That's a lot of class." She
Hmm.
said,
Exactly. Yeah.
"In that class." I went, "Okay." You know what? I
Yeah.
think I left the band, so I was not able to make a deal that I was happy with going forward in
Hmm.
black and white. I wanted to make a certain deal. I wanted certain things, and I wasn't able to do it. And when I wasn't able to do it, I had another opportunity, which is Billy Idol. He was asking me to put a band together with him, and this was concurrent. And I got to a point where I just said, I've tried everything. I don't think I'm going to be happy with this, and I'm really excited about going to do this other thing. So I left the band, and I don't know if that's had something to do with it, but she took a very much a dislike to me after that point.
Hmm.
That makes sense because all these years, I had no proof that Phil was fired from Ozzy, but there was a lot of talk of Jake being fired. And now you're bringing up that you left the band. It's like, well, that's never really been out there. I mean, in my radar, but it makes sense because nobody ever talks about Phil got fired from Ozzy.
No, and I literally left. I mean, when I called Sharon, I said, I'm going to leave, and she said to me, "Oh no, we don't want you. You don't want to do that. We want, She was very friendly about it. Said, "Well, why don't you come and have a talk about it?" And I said, "Well, this is what I need. I need to actually have this, and I'm willing to make some, to talk. But if I can't get what I'm looking for, then." And she said to me, "We can't do that." And I said, "Okay," and I'm going to leave. And then, you know,
I think that led Ultimate Sin being out of print for a while, right?
I don't know that that's got anything to do with it.
Right.
Honestly, I don't think so. I think that's putting a lot of importance on me, and it's not. I wasn't that important. I think that I think it's got more to do with right after that period, as we got into the '90s. All of a sudden, all the grunge music came around, and all of those bands, they all cited influence with Black Sabbath and that's what it was. And I think that at that point, the Ultimate Sin era kind of stood out like a sore thumb, as everyone was going back to the whole Black Sabbath vibe. And I think that's probably got more to do with it.
Yeah, the glam image more.
Yeah,
That you guys had.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know. You have to have somebody who knows, but knows these things, but that's my own personal take on it. So it certainly had nothing to do with me.
All right. And this has come up a couple times in the chat. Did you date Julie Gray, the girl from the Ultimate Sin video?
You want me to kiss and tell here or something?
I've seen this a few times come up in this chat.
I think that's a yes.
Well, we were pretty good friends. Yeah.
All right, spill the beans. Come on.
Leave it at that. We went to Tahiti together. Yeah.
All right. Somebody wants to know, who are your biggest influences for bass?
Oh God, man, that's a tough one. I mean, it's just.
Have you always played bass, or did you start out as a guitarist?
Well, I started out on, well, actually, musically, I started out on classical instruments. I played classical violin for years.
Oh wow!
I mean, fully, I was going through all my grade exams and everything. So, I could have gone into classical music big time, and I took it to a fairly high standard. And when I was probably, I don't know, very, very young, I got my first guitar and I started playing guitar, or at least trying to work it out and trying to figure out how to play guitar. And guitar was what I started playing. And then I bought my first bass probably when I was, I don't know, 14 or something. I just found the receipt for it somewhere around here.
He keeps everything.
Yeah.
No. We have a house in LA and we have a house here also. So we were moving stuff over here. I had to start packing all this stuff. And when you pack stuff, is you go through all these things that you haven't seen in years. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, there's a receipt for my first bass guitar. It was like 20 pounds or something. So I started, so I played bass. But my influences are very, very diverse. They would run the gamut from, of course, McCartney, Andy Fraser, who I loved in Free, those kind of classic rock players. Then I went through a whole period where I was obsessed with 50s Americana rock and roll. So people like Johnny Burnett and people like Bill Black, who played on the Elvis Sunset sessions. I loved all that music. And then it went through the Stones, Led Zeppelin, of course, which was a huge, huge influence. But on the other side, a lot of jazz fusion guys, Ralph Armstrong, Tom Fowler, Stanley Clarke, Jacko, all of these guys. I was very influenced by that. Around that time, early 80s, that's most of what I was listening to was probably a lot of what they used to call jazz fusion, which was
you like Victor Wooten?
Absolutely. Victor's an amazing bass player.
I love Victor Wooten, yes.
But back then I was listening to stuff that jazz fusion today is called yacht rock. That's what they call it. But it's the same people that was playing on all of those records. It was all the Toto guys, and it was like Jay Graydon's and his amazing bass players. And I listened to Al Jarreau a lot. I mean, a lot of my songwriting back then was these chords that were very typical of that kind of music. And when you cross those things over into a style of music which is not typical, you get new sounding ideas. And so that was something which I followed. But I just have there are too many great bass players that I look up to, and because everyone's unique, everyone's individual, and I never ceased to be amazed at how diverse and how cool a bass player that I've never heard of before will come along and play something I've never even thought of playing. It's like, wow, that's great. But it's a beautiful instrument because it directly ties together the vocal melody and the bass line, and it's a classical concept in classical music, which is called figured bass, where it goes back to Bach, where you have a melody line and you have a bass line. The two things work with each other, and what happens in the middle, the chords in the middle, are typically subject to interpretation. So it's very much like the foundation of jazz. And when you put those two things together, then you start to see the sense in people like McCartney, Geddy Lee, Sting, all these people who are bass players who sing, and they've managed to find a way to marry those two things in such an incredible way. That's something which I'm blown away by.
Was it the Beatles that kicked it off for you, like most people though?
I mean, the Beatles were when I was a kid was on the radio all the time. Of course, and my mom used to play the radio all the time, so that's what I used to hear. But I listened to, I got very much into glam rock when it was happening. It was bands like Queen, and it was like Slade and Sweet and David Bowie, and that was also on the heels of all the free era rock and roll that was coming out, and um, so it was all a big hodgepodge of incredible music, but there was a lot of that glam stuff that was going on, and that sort of ties us back to this album, which is where I, get a little bit of nostalgia with doing something that's kind of glam rock, a little bit of a glam punk thing. But yeah, the Beatles were of course a huge influence. But I liked some weird stuff. I mean, I was really big on musicals as well. Like, you know, Lionel Bart's Oliver Twist was something when I was a kid. I was just obsessed with it, and anything that had anything to do with Dickens. And I was a Dickens freak, and I love that a lot of my writing of lyrics, stems from interest in musicals and interest in storytellers like that. I love that. So, you know,
Right on. I
Someone
got,
wanted,
Yeah.
yeah,
yep. Somebody want to know what was it like working with Billy Idol?
Billy's just more charisma than anybody I've ever known in my life. I mean, he just
Really?
walks in somewhere, it's right there, and he's great. I love Billy.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He knows exactly who he is, and that's the most incredible thing. Because when you work with artists, it's one thing to have a great song, uh, but it's another thing when you've got a singer who has his own personality, knows exactly who he is, and that really pushes it over the edge.
Mm.
That's what gives you your Billy Idols and your Mick Jaggers and your David Bowies and your Bob Dylans and all these people. They're people who have this personality, and Billy has his own personality as well, which is just, I mean, it's just he exudes this just incredible charisma. That's the way I could describe it, and
Mm.
he's really funny as well.
We've been listening to his new Christmas album at my job.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had one.
Yeah.
Somebody
Good.
wants to know what you think of Phil Lynott as a bass player.
Oh my God. Yeah. Phil was brilliant. I actually knew Phil Lynott quite well.
Oh, really?
And yeah, in London, we used to hang out. So he was just another person with incredibly charismatic person. Great writer.
Mm-hmm.
And
For sure.
he tied his songs into his bass playing.
All right.
His bass playing fits the songs perfectly. He used to play a little bit high for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He had that mirror. He had a mirror scratch plate. You know that, right?
Right. Right.
he would point it at the light.
You point at the light. You could point it to various people and stuff out there, and that's on the Ultimate Sin. I got mirror scratch plates on my Precision.
Yeah. That's right. You played a P bass on that tour. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I totally stole that idea from him.
Very cool. And someone else wants to know, what do you think of grunge music and the effect it had on the glam scene?
The glam scene, what was going on in the '80s was fine and it was great, and then all of a sudden one day it just got to the point where it just got kind of silly. Every no disrespect to anybody, but we're starting to sing about some really lame stuff, and it was time for all change. I remember being in a car with somebody, and they played me Teen Spirit, and it had barely just come out, and I remember thinking to myself, kind of sounds a bit sort of like Policey or something like that, and then there's this big huge metal chorus, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. I had I really didn't have any idea, but that was that was the that was the end of the '80s. That was the end of the glam era. But since then, I mean, there's lots and lots of bands that I really liked. I love STP, Pearl Jam. I love Alice in Chains. I mean, there's so much great stuff in that music.
Yeah.
And Who else do I like? Soundgarden,
Yeah.
great band. You know, there's some really great stuff, and there were some great singers as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. The
Yeah.
90s was when I really got into music, like 91, 90, 92-ish or whatever. And that's when all that stuff really hit. So I was huge into that.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty much a fan of any new music that comes along, anything that breaks the mold, anything that does something different. You know, I want to hear about it.
Is there any new band that you're into right now?
New bands that I'm into right now. Arrival Sons has been like a really big band for me. You know, I
Okay.
love that band. But a lot of the time, and some of my friends as well. I'm really good friends with Richie Kotzen. I love what he does. I love what he puts out. I listen to a lot of his stuff. I love Jerry's new album, Jerry Cantrell's new record.
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
He puts out good stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much Richie sounds like Chris Cornell when he sings.
Oh, you think? Yeah.
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 I mean, amazing singer. Yeah, great guitar player too. I just heard he and Adrian Smith from Maiden just released a new single. It was a good song.
Yeah, I think because they did an album before, and I think they've got another album coming out right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah,
great player. Doesn't use a pick.
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember that. I remember he said to me one day. He said, "You know, I don't even know what it was. Maybe we were talking about something, but he said, you know, I'm going to start seeing if I can just play with fingers." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And boy, he took that and ran with it, right?
So, I've become a fan of his through the Winery Dogs, that the band he does with Billy Sheehan and Mike Portnoy, and amazing band. And you know, I'd never heard that Poison record that he did. I'd never heard it in my life other than the single that came out with Stand. And I listened to it a couple years ago for the first time. I was like, wow, this sounds like a Richie Kotzen album with Brett Michaels singing on.
Yeah.
You know, it's totally different Poison. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, we did. I played in Richie's band for 3 years, 3 tours. So we went all over the place. Went to the Far East, Japan, South America, Europe, Spain, Canary Islands, all sorts of places. We did lots of shows around LA as well. So, and we've stayed best of friends. He's a dear friend. So
that's great.
Favorite people.
Yeah.
Favorite Dio song to play with Last in Line?
Probably Last in Line.
Yeah, that's
probably
cool.
Last.
It's a great bass line in that song.
Thank you. Yeah. That's exactly what. Yeah. I mean, Jimmy was was a great bass player. He was a good friend as well. We when I first moved to LA, we actually lived together, so we had some history. And
sure, I bet you got some great Jimmy Bain stories then.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and he was a great bass player. He was a bit older than me, and so when I was younger, he was also somebody that I looked up to, and took a lot of influence from. So when I first went out, started playing with Last in Line, we didn't know if we were going to continue the band. At that time, we were just going to fulfill some shows that we had to do. So I just sort of went out there with the attitude that I was going to try to channel Jimmy, or just play how he would have played. I knew how he played, so I tried to just do that in sort of tribute, you know. And then it wasn't until a while afterwards where I think it was Viv said, you know, we should maybe think about doing another record because there's a chemistry here that's working. And so the rest is history. So it ended up happening.
Yeah. I got to see Last in Line once, and it was unfortunately Jimmy's last show. They did a pre-cruise show.
Oh, in Florida, right?
In Florida, yeah, in Miami. And they did a pre-cruise, and then 2 days later on the cruise, they found him just passed away. Oh. But it was an amazing show, and unfortunately, you guys never came back.
Yeah. Well, we've been to Florida,
but South Florida, because Florida is huge.
No, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have been there if you guys played South Florida. I would have been there.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was North Florida.
We'll come back and play again.
Yes, please come south. I'll go. Any last questions before? And thank you so much again, Phil, for your time.
Oh, you're
The
welcome.
Yes.
only other question is somebody wants to know: are you wearing a Ferrari jacket or is it an English football team?
Don't think it's anything. I think it's just this kind of.
It's just a jacket.
It says Knightsbridge on the back, which is an area near Chelsea in London. I don't think it's anything particularly. It's just there's a design. That's all it is. So it's not a.
The mystery has been solved. We
There
don't
you
know.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for your time. Let the people know where they can get the new album out. Is it on Amazon and so on?
Well, right now it's available through all digital distribution. They do have some CDs that are going to be available. I'm actually in the middle of mastering it right now for vinyl. It's going to be available as a vinyl album, and that'll be really cool.
Are you going to tour with them if they tour?
Probably not. I mean, I might go do one show or two shows here and there just for
Close by you.
Yeah, but no, it's I'm not part of the band. I mean, I know I play
Right.
on the record.
Yeah.
Les asked me to play on the record, so because he's a bass player.
Right,
So
right.
He said, "Hey, do you want to play bass on it?" And I went, "Sure, you want me to?" Because would you do that? I go, "Oh, yeah, why not?" And it was kind of fun. I got to play on both sides of the studio glass on that one, like producer here and then player here.
Yeah.
Tried to fire myself a couple of times. But no, it was fun playing on it, and and then last in line stuff is going to be, well, just keep an eye out. I mean, people can follow me through my Instagram, which is the best way to follow me, which is at Phil Soussan. But I'm sure there's going to be lots of announcements when we get close to being able to do something like that. I've actually been putting songs together. I might actually do another solo album as well. So that's cool. I started writing some songs just a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden I've got a whole stack of them. So I'm thinking I might put them on a solo record. That would be
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool.
I'd love to have you back on when you release the next solo album.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'd love to have you back on when you release.
Oh,
your
sure.
solo.
Well, I've released 2 solo albums before, but I don't do them very, very frequently. I'm not like, Richie Carson, who has like, 28 solo albums or something. I usually release one every 28 years, so
Yeah.
I had 2 out. So this next one, hopefully I'll try to get it together pretty soon.
Right on. Well,
Very
thank
cool.
you so much, Phil, for your time. I'm very honored to have you on my channel.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Mark.
a lot of fun.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And I hope you had fun speaking with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, lots of laughs, lots of good stories, and great chatting with you guys. And hope to see you in person very soon. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Sure.
Cool. My way, man.
Meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and let's
Same
hope
to
it's a
you.
Happy New Year for everybody. In the last few years, we're not so sure anymore. I get start getting a little anxious, but hopefully it's going to be a really good New Year for everybody and all your listeners and viewers out there. So.
Yeah, same to you.
Yeah, same to you.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy
Merry
New
Christmas,
Year.
man.
Thank you.
All right, Phil, you take care.
All right, you too.
Thanks, man.
Have a good night.
You're good. Bye-bye.
All right, really cool, man. That was awesome.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun, Phil.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Oh, and thank you everybody for watching and all the questions and schmack 'em a gub.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.